The elevator doors slid shut with their usual mechanical whisper, sealing Maya Chen inside the polished steel box that would carry her to the 42nd floor of Sterling Industries. She pressed her back against the cool metal wall, clutching her cleaning cart's handle with white knuckles. The familiar weight of the industrial vacuum cleaner and the chemical smell of disinfectant had become her armor over the past 18 months, protection against the sneers, the dismissive glances, the cruel laughter that followed her through these gleaming corporate halls. Floor 42, the elevator announced in its pristine digital voice. Maya straightened her shoulders, adjusted her navy blue janitor's uniform, and prepared for another night of being invisible. The doors opened to reveal the executive level of Sterling Industries, where glass offices stretched like transparent fortresses along marble corridors. Even at 11 p.m., several lights burned behind those glass walls, ambitious executives working late, plotting their next corporate conquest. Maya had learned their patterns over months of silent observation. She knew who stayed late to actually work and who lingered to be seen working. She knew who kept vodka in their desk drawer and who conducted affairs during lunch meetings. She knew everything, and they knew nothing about her. Maya wheeled her cart past the reception desk, where a massive portrait of Richard Sterling dominated the wall. The company's founder stared down with steel-gray eyes that seemed to follow her movement. 73 years old, silver-haired, and worth approximately $2.3 billion, according to the latest Forbes estimate that had been circulating through the building's gossip network. Maya had memorized every detail of that face over countless nights of cleaning beneath his watchful gaze. Well, look who's finally graced us with her presence. The voice cut through the quiet like a blade. Maya turned to see Victoria Ashford, emerging from the corner office, her Louboutin heels clicking against the marble with predatory precision. Vice President of Operations, Harvard MBA, and the kind of woman who wielded her beauty like a weapon. Her perfectly straightened blonde hair caught the fluorescent light as she approached, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Ms. Ashford," Maya said quietly, keeping her voice neutral. "I'm right on schedule, are you?" Victoria checked her Cartier watch with theatrical precision. "Because it's 11:07, and your shift officially starts at 11 o'clock. In the real world, that's called being late." Maya bit back her first response. In the real world, she wanted to say, being 7 minutes late wouldn't matter to anyone who wasn't desperately looking for reasons to humiliate someone. Instead, she simply nodded. "I'll make sure to arrive earlier tomorrow. See that you do." Victoria's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "You know, Maya, can I call you Maya? I've been thinking about your ... situation here." "My situation?" "Your employment, your position, your future." Victoria began circling Maya like a shark sensing blood. 18 months you've been cleaning our floors, emptying our trash, scrubbing our toilets. Don't you think it's time to ... expand your horizons?" Other employees had begun to notice the conversation. Marcus Webb, the ambitious junior partner, paused in the doorway of his office. Sarah Kim from accounting peered over her computer screen. Even the security guard had stopped his rounds to watch the show. Maya felt the familiar burn of humiliation rising in her chest, but her voice remained steady. "I'm satisfied with my position, Ms. Ashford." "Satisfied?" Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Oh, sweetheart, that's the problem right there. You're thinking too small. You're just a janitor, but you could be so much more if you applied yourself to something more ... appropriate to your skill level." The laughter started with Marcus Webb, harsh bark that echoed off the glass walls. Sarah Kim giggled behind her hand. Even the security guard chuckled as he resumed his patrol. "You're just a janitor," Victoria repeated, savoring each word. "Maybe it's time to accept what you are and stop pretending you belong in a place like this." Maya's fingers tightened on her cart handle until her knuckles went white. For a moment, the corporate facade threatened to crack, and something dangerous flickered behind her dark eyes. She took a slow breath, counted to 5, and pushed the cart forward. "If you'll excuse me," she said quietly, "I have work to do." As she walked away, their laughter followed her down the corridor like a pack of hyenas. Maya pushed her cart into the first office and closed the door behind her, shutting out the sound, but not the memory. She stood in the darkness for a long moment, her heart hammering against her ribs. Then she turned on the light and got to work. The office belonged to James Morrison, Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. Maya had cleaned his space hundreds of times, knew every family photo on his desk, every coffee stain on his leather chair. Tonight, she noticed something new, a manila folder marked "Confidential," sitting beside his computer. Maya had always been careful to avoid reading documents during her cleaning. It was a matter of professional ethics, she told herself. But tonight, after Victoria's public humiliation, her resolve wavered. She glanced at the closed door, then at the folder, just a glance. Just to see if her suspicions about Morrison's recent behavior were correct. The folder contained financial projections for the upcoming merger with Blackstone Corporation. Maya's eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. The deal would mean massive layoffs, nearly 30% of Sterling Industries' workforce would be eliminated within 6 months of the merger's completion. The executives would receive golden parachutes worth millions, while thousands of loyal employees would be cast aside like yesterday's trash. Maya photographed the documents with her phone, her hands trembling slightly. This wasn't just corporate gossip, this was insider information that could destroy lives. She closed the folder and placed it exactly where she'd found it, then continued cleaning as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something that would change everything. As Maya worked through the night, cleaning offices and emptying trash bins, she carried the weight of that secret knowledge. By dawn, she had formulated a plan. Not just for the merger information, for something far more significant. It was time to stop being invisible. It was time to reclaim what had been stolen from her. 23 years ago, Maya's studio apartment in Chinatown bore no resemblance to the gleaming corporate towers where she spent her nights. The walls were covered with newspaper clippings, printed articles, and photographs connected by red string like a detective's investigation board. At the center of it all hung a single photograph, a family portrait from 1999. Richard Sterling, younger and darker-haired, stood behind a beautiful Asian woman holding a 5-year-old girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. The woman was Dr. Lily Chen Sterling, renowned biochemist and Richard's second wife. The child was Emma Sterling, heiress to a fortune that would eventually be worth billions. The child was Maya. She stood before the wall of evidence, still wearing her janitor's uniform, and traced the outline of her younger self with one finger. 23 years ago, she had been Emma Sterling, beloved daughter of a business empire. Then, in a single night of violence and chaos, she had become Maya Chen, lost girl, foster child, survivor. The official story was that 5-year-old Emma Sterling had been kidnapped during a home invasion that killed her mother. Despite a massive FBI investigation and a $10 million reward, no trace of the child was ever found. The case went cold. Richard Sterling remarried within 2 years, a younger woman who gave him the son he'd always wanted. The missing daughter became a tragic footnote in the Sterling family history. But Maya remembered everything. She remembered her mother's laboratory in the basement of their Marin County mansion, where Dr. Lily Chen Sterling had been working on groundbreaking research for Sterling Industries' pharmaceutical division. She remembered the men in black masks who broke into their home, demanding files and research data. She remembered her mother hiding her in the panic room, whispering urgent instructions. "If something happens to me, find the red folder. Take it to Agent Williams at the FBI. Promise me, Emma. Promise me you'll remember." She remembered the explosion that rocked the house, the smoke, the screaming. She remembered crawling out of the panic room hours later to find her mother dead and the house in flames. But she was just 5 years old, traumatized and terrified. Instead of going to the FBI, she ran. She ran until she collapsed on a city street, where she was found by a Chinese-American family who assumed she was a lost immigrant child who spoke no English. The Chen family took her in, gave her a name, and eventually adopted her when no one came looking for a traumatized little girl who claimed to be someone else entirely. As she grew older, Maya began to remember more clearly, but by then she was 13 and had tried to tell her story so many times that everyone, including herself, had begun to doubt its truth. But the doubt had never killed the certainty buried deep in her heart. She was Emma Sterling. She was the lost daughter, and she was going to prove it. Maya moved to her desk, where 3 laptops hummed quietly, their screens filled with financial data, corporate communications, and security footage. She had spent 18 months infiltrating Sterling Industries, not as a corporate spy, but as someone seeking the truth about her own identity. The janitor position had been perfect invisible access to every corner of the building. Every conversation, every secret. She opened the first laptop and began typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The merger documents she'd photographed tonight would be uploaded to several financial news websites within hours. But that was just the beginning. Maya had been collecting evidence for months, proof of insider trading, environmental cover-ups, worker safety violations, and other corporate crimes that would make the Justice Department very interested in Sterling Industries. But first, she needed to confront the man who had failed to protect her mother and had forgotten to search for his daughter. Maya opened a secure messaging application and began typing, "Mr. Sterling, 23 years ago, your wife Dr. Lily Chen Sterling was murdered during a break-in at your Marin County residence. Your 5-year-old daughter Emma was reported kidnapped and never found. I know what really happened that night. I know who was responsible. I know where your daughter is. If you want answers, meet me in your office tomorrow at midnight. Come alone. Tell no one." Someone who remembers Maya hesitated for only a moment before hitting send. The message would route through multiple proxy servers, making it untraceable. But that wouldn't matter after tomorrow night. After tomorrow night, she wouldn't need to hide anymore. She looked at the family photograph one more time, then began preparing for the performance of her life. The next evening, Maya arrived at Sterling Industries 30 minutes early. She used her janitorial access card to enter through the service entrance, then took the freight elevator to the 42nd floor. The executive level was dark except for emergency lighting, casting long shadows across the marble corridors. Maya had changed from her usual janitor's uniform into dark jeans and a black sweater. She looked younger, more vulnerable, an intentional choice. She needed Richard Sterling to see her as a person, not just another corporate threat. She waited in the reception area, sitting in one of the leather chairs that faced the massive portrait of Richard Sterling. As midnight approached, she heard the elevator chime and the whisper of expensive shoes on marble. Richard Sterling emerged from the elevator alone, but Maya's trained eye caught the subtle bulge of a concealed weapon beneath his tailored suit jacket. He was taking no chances with a potential blackmailer. Good. That meant he was taking her seriously. "You have 5 minutes," Sterling said without preamble. His voice was exactly as Maya remembered, deep, authoritative, with the slight rasp of a man who had spent decades making decisions that affected thousands of lives. "Before I call security and have you arrested for corporate espionage." Maya stood slowly, her hands visible and non-threatening. In the dim light, she could see Sterling's eyes trying to assess her age, ethnicity, threat level. She was just another young woman to him, one of thousands who might have a grudge against his empire. "You received my message," she said quietly. I received a message from someone with delusions of grandeur and access to confidential information. Sterling's eyes were cold steel, which makes you either a very clever industrial spy or a very stupid blackmailer. I'm neither. Maya stepped closer, moving into the light cast by the emergency spots. I'm someone who has been waiting 23 years to have this conversation. Something flickered in Sterling's expression: surprise, recognition. That this wasn't going to be a typical corporate threat. He studied her face more carefully, his businessman's mask slipping slightly. You said you know what happened to my daughter, he said finally. I know exactly what happened to your daughter. Maya's voice was steady, but her heart was racing. She survived the night her mother was murdered. She crawled out of the panic room after the men left. She tried to find help, but she was just 5 years old and traumatized. She ended up in the foster system under a different name because she was too scared to tell anyone who she really was. Sterling's face had gone pale. That's impossible. The FBI searched for months. If Emma had survived, the FBI was looking for a kidnapped heiress, Maya interrupted. They weren't looking for a traumatized little girl who had been taken in by a Chinese-American family and given a new identity. They weren't looking for someone who had been taught to keep quiet about her past because talking about it only brought pain and disbelief. You're lying, but Sterling's voice lacked conviction. His businessman's instincts were telling him that this young woman knew details that hadn't been made public, details that only someone who had been there could know. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a gold locket shaped like a butterfly. The metal was tarnished with age, but the inscription on the back was still visible. To Emma, my beautiful butterfly, love, Mommy. Sterling's breath caught. Maya watched the color drain from his face as he recognized the locket he had given to his wife to give to their daughter for her 5th birthday. Where did you get that? He whispered. My mother gave it to me the night she died, Maya said quietly. She put it around my neck while she was hiding me in the panic room. She told me to never take it off, that it would keep me safe. It's the only thing I have left of her. Sterling reached out with trembling fingers, but Maya pulled the locket back. You want to know what else I remember? I remember my mother's laboratory in the basement. I remember her working late nights on something she called the breakthrough. I remember the men who came looking for her research. I remember their faces. Emma? Sterling's voice cracked on the name. Is it really you? Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she held them back. She had waited too long and planned too carefully to let emotion derail her now. My name is Maya Chen. It has been for 18 years. Emma Sterling died the night her mother was murdered and her father failed to find her. The accusation hit Sterling like a physical blow. He staggered backward, his face crumpling with grief and guilt. I looked for you. I hired the best investigators, offered rewards, never stopped hoping. You stopped looking after 2 years, Maya said coldly. You remarried. You had another child. You built a new life while your daughter was bouncing between foster homes, wondering why her daddy never came to save her. Sterling's composure completely shattered. He sank into one of the leather chairs, his head in his hands. I thought you were dead, he whispered. The blood at the scene, the violence, I thought they had killed you too. They tried to. Maya's voice was barely audible, but Mom hid me well. She saved my life, and I've spent every day since then trying to honor her memory. Sterling looked up at her, his eyes red with unshed tears. What do you want from me? Money? Position in the company? Whatever it is, it's yours. Just ... please. Let me try to make this right. Maya shook her head. I don't want your money, Richard. I want justice for my mother, for the employees you're about to betray in the Blackstone merger, for everyone you've hurt in your quest to build an empire on other people's graves. Sterling's grief instantly transformed into suspicion. What are you talking about? I know about the merger. I know about the layoffs. I know about the environmental violations at the Seattle plant and the safety cover-ups at the Texas facility. Maya's voice grew stronger with each accusation. I've spent 18 months documenting your crimes, and tomorrow morning, all of that evidence goes to the FBI, the SEC, and every major news outlet in the country. You're blackmailing me. Sterling's voice was flat. I'm giving you a choice. Maya stepped closer, her eyes blazing with the fury she had been suppressing for months. You can face the consequences of your actions like a man, or I can destroy everything you've built while the world watches. Your legacy, your empire, your precious son's inheritance, all of it can disappear. Sterling stood slowly, his businessman's mask sliding back into place. The grieving father was gone, replaced by the corporate predator who had built a billion-dollar empire through ruthless calculation. You have no idea what you're dealing with, he said quietly. The merger will proceed. The layoffs are necessary for the company's survival. And if you think you can threaten me, I'm not threatening you, Maya interrupted. I'm warning you, the same people who killed my mother are still out there. They're still connected to this company. And they won't hesitate to eliminate another inconvenient Sterling family member. The words hit their target. Sterling's face went white as he processed the implications. What are you saying? I'm saying that my mother's research was stolen. The night she died, but not by random criminals. She was murdered by people who knew exactly what they were looking for. People who had inside information about her work and her schedule. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. People who work for Sterling Industries. The revelation hung in the air between them like a loaded gun. Sterling stared at his daughter because despite everything, he was beginning to believe that's who she was, and realized that the nightmare he thought had ended 23 years ago was just beginning. Who? He asked finally. Maya smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Meet me here tomorrow night, and I'll tell you everything. But first, you need to make a choice. Cancel the merger, or watch everything you've built turn to ash. She turned to leave, then paused at the elevator. Oh, and Richard? Next time you want to meet privately, make sure Victoria Ashford isn't listening at the door. Sterling spun around to see Victoria stepping out of the shadows near the corridor entrance, her perfect composure intact, but her eyes burning with barely contained fury. Hello, darling, Victoria said sweetly. I think we need to talk. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. Victoria Ashford stood in the doorway. Like a perfectly dressed predator, her red lips curved in a smile that never reached her eyes. She had been Richard Sterling's third wife for 15 years, the ambitious younger woman who had helped him rebuild his life after the tragic loss of his first family. Now at 42, she was still beautiful, still dangerous, and absolutely furious. How long have you been listening? Sterling demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Long enough, Victoria replied, her heels clicking against the marble as she approached. Long enough to know that our little janitor here has been playing a very dangerous game. Maya stood perfectly still beside the elevator, her finger poised over the call button. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she had come too far to back down now. Mrs. Sterling, she said politely. Working late again? Oh, I'm not working, darling, Victoria purred. I'm protecting my family. You see, when someone threatens my husband, my son, our future, well, that makes it very personal. Sterling moved between the two women, his confusion evident. Victoria, what are you doing here? I followed you, of course. Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when you started receiving mysterious messages? When did you become secretive about your evening plans? I thought you were having an affair, Richard. I never imagined it would be something so much more explosive. Maya felt the pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. "You knew," she said quietly. "You knew who I was before tonight." "Oh, sweetheart." Victoria's smile widened. "I've known who you were since the day you applied for the janitor position. Did you really think we don't run background checks? Did you think we wouldn't notice when Maya Chun's facial recognition software came back with a 97% match to Emma Sterling's age progression models?" Sterling stared at his wife in shock. "You knew she was alive? You knew Emma was alive, and you didn't tell me?" "I knew someone claiming to be Emma was working in our building," Victoria corrected smoothly. "I also knew that whoever she was dangerous. So I kept her close. I watched her. I waited to see what she really wanted." "And what did you discover?" Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Victoria's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "I discovered that you're exactly as resourceful and determined as your mother was. Dr. Lily, Chen Sterling, brilliant scientist, devoted wife, and ultimately, a woman who couldn't leave well enough alone." The admission hung in the air like poison. Gas. Sterling's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, realization, and finally horror. "Victoria, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that your first wife was a very smart woman who asked very inconvenient questions," Victoria replied. "She discovered some irregularities in the pharmaceutical division's research. She started digging into chemical compounds that weren't officially part of any Sterling Industries project. She found evidence of off-books research that could have destroyed everything we'd built." Maya's blood ran cold. The breakthrough she was working on, what was it really? "A cure," Victoria said simply. "A cure for the degenerative neurological disease that Sterling Industries had been secretly causing through industrial chemical exposure. Your mother discovered that we weren't just manufacturing pharmaceuticals, we were manufacturing the disease, and then selling the treatment. A perfect closed loop of profit." Sterling looked like he'd been shot. "That's impossible." "I would have known." "You knew what I wanted you to know," Victoria snapped. "You're brilliant at making money, Richard, but you're terrible at seeing the big picture. You were so focused on building your empire that you never questioned how quickly we were achieving our goals." Maya felt sick. "How many people died?" "Thousands," Victoria said without a hint of remorse. "Factory workers mostly. Chemical plant employees. People who lived near our facilities. All written off as industrial accidents or environmental hazards. Nothing that could be traced directly back to us." "And my mother found out," Maya said. "Your mother found out, and she was going to expose everything. So I made sure that wouldn't happen." Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. "I hired the men who killed her. I told them where to find her research. I made sure they destroyed everything that could connect us to the cover-up." Sterling lunged forward, his hands reaching for Victoria's throat, but she stepped back smoothly and pulled a small pistol from her purse. "I wouldn't, darling. We still have so much to discuss." Maya used the distraction to edge closer to the emergency alarm hidden behind the reception desk. If she could trigger it, security would respond within minutes. But Victoria noticed the movement immediately. "Stop right there, Emma, or Maya, or whatever you're calling yourself these days." The gun swung toward Maya with practiced ease. "You've caused enough trouble for one lifetime. You're going to kill me too?" Maya asked, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "Just like you killed my mother?" "I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect my family," Victoria replied. "My real family. My son will inherit Sterling Industries, not some ghost from the past with a grudge and a locket." Sterling stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. "Victoria, this is insane. She's my daughter, my child." "She's a threat," Victoria corrected. "She has evidence that could destroy us. She knows about the merger, about the cover-ups, about everything we've worked to build. She's exactly like her mother, too smart and too moral for her own good. Maya laughed, a sound that echoed strangely in the quiet corridor. You think I'm like my mother? You have no idea. What's that supposed to mean? Victoria demanded. It means I'm not just my mother's daughter, Maya said, her voice growing stronger. I'm also Richard Sterling's daughter. And I learned something from both of them, how to plan ahead. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, the screen already displaying a live stream that had been broadcasting for the past 15 minutes. The viewer count showed over 10,000 people watching in real time. Say hello to the internet, Victoria, Maya said sweetly. Your confession just went viral. Victoria's face contorted with rage. You little bitch, the gun fired. Just as Richard Sterling threw himself between the two women. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the reception desk. Blood bloomed across his white shirt like a spreading flower. Richard! Maya screamed, dropping her phone and rushing to his side. Victoria stared at the gun in her hand as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. IDN single quotes D. I wasn't aiming for him. Call 911. Maya pressed her hands against Sterling's shoulder wound, trying to stem the bleeding. Call an ambulance. But Victoria wasn't listening. She was staring at the phone on the floor, its screen still glowing with the live stream that had just broadcast. Attempted murder to thousands of viewers. It's over, she whispered. Everything is over. Sterling's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Maya's face with visible effort. Emma? He whispered. I'm here, Maya said, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm here, Dad. Don't try to talk. I'm sorry, he gasped. I'm so sorry I didn't find you. I'm sorry I failed you. You didn't fail me, Maya said fiercely. You saved me. You just saved my life. Victoria laughed bitterly. How touching. The family reunion I never wanted to see. Maya looked up at her stepmother, her eyes blazing with fury. It's over, Victoria. The police are already on their way. The FBI will be here within the hour. Everyone knows what you did, do they? Victoria's voice was deadly quiet. Or do they just know what you wanted them to know? Before Maya could ask what she meant, Victoria raised the gun again, this time pointing it at her own head. No! Maya lunged forward, but she was too late. The gunshot echoed through the corridor like thunder, and Victoria Ashford crumpled to the marble floor, her blood spreading in a dark pool that reflected the emergency lighting like a broken mirror. Maya knelt beside her stepmother's body, checking for a pulse she knew she wouldn't find. Victoria's eyes stared sightlessly at the ceiling, her perfect composure finally broken. Is she dead? Sterling asked weakly. Maya nodded, then returned to applying pressure to his wound. She's gone, but you're going to be okay. The paramedics are coming. As if summoned by her words, the elevator chimed, and a team of paramedics rushed onto the 42nd floor, followed by police officers and FBI agents. Maya found herself pushed aside as medical professionals took over Sterling's care. Their efficient movements, a sharp contrast to the chaos that had preceded their arrival. Ma'am, I'm Agent Sarah Williams. A woman in a dark suit approached Maya. I need to ask you some questions about what happened here tonight. Maya looked at the agent's badge, then at her face, and felt a chill of recognition. Williams? Ah. You related to Agent Robert Williams? Agent Williams' expression shifted. He was my father. He worked on the Emma Sterling kidnapping case 23 years ago. He never stopped believing she was alive. She paused, studying Maya's face. You're her, aren't you? You're Emma Sterling. Maya nodded, too exhausted to maintain her facade. Any longer. I'm Emma Sterling. And I have a story to tell you. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the boardroom of Sterling Industries, facing a table full of executives, lawyers, and federal agents. The room where she had once been mocked as just a janitor was now the setting for the complete dismantling of one of America's largest corporate empires. Agent Williams sat at the head of the table, surrounded by thick files and laptop computers, displaying evidence that had been collected over years of investigation. The live stream from that night had been just the beginning. Maya's 18 months of undercover work had provided the FBI with a treasure trove of evidence about corporate malfeasance, environmental crimes, and conspiracy to commit murder. "Let's review what we know," Agent Williams said, opening the first file. Dr. Lily Chen Sterling discovered that Sterling Industries was deliberately exposing workers and communities to neurological toxins, then developing and selling treatments for the resulting diseases. When she threatened to expose this conspiracy, she was murdered by hired killers working for Victoria Ashford Sterling. Richard Sterling, his arm still in a sling from the gunshot wound, nodded grimly. "I've turned over all financial records related to the pharmaceutical division. The pattern is clear once you know what to look for. Every new treatment we developed corresponded to a spike in related diseases near our manufacturing facilities. The cover-up involved bribing government inspectors, falsifying environmental reports, and suppressing worker safety complaints," Agent Williams continued. Mrs. Sterling also arranged for the murders of at least 3 other people who had become suspicious of the pattern: 2 environmental scientists and a CDC researcher. Maya spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "What about the merger with Blackstone?" "Cancelled," Sterling replied. "Along with the planned layoffs. The company is being restructured under federal oversight. All affected communities will receive compensation, and we're establishing a $1 billion fund for medical treatment and environmental cleanup." "That's not enough," Maya said quietly. "Money can't bring back the people who died." "No," Sterling agreed. "But it's a start. And it's more than they would have gotten if you hadn't exposed the truth." Agent Williams leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, or should I say, Ms. Sterling, your work over the past 18 months has been extraordinary. You've given us enough evidence to prosecute dozens of people for crimes ranging from conspiracy to murder. But I have to ask, what made you decide to become a janitor? Why that particular cover?" Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. "Because janitors are invisible. People don't notice them, don't think about them, don't consider them a threat. I could go anywhere, hear anything, see everything. I was hiding in plain sight. And the live stream?" "Insurance," Maya replied. "I knew Victoria was dangerous, but I didn't know how dangerous. I set up the stream as a backup in case something went wrong. I just didn't expect it to become the key evidence in a murder case." Sterling shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Maya, I need to ask you something. Can you ever forgive me? For not finding you, for not protecting you, for letting this happen to your mother." Maya looked at her father, a man she had spent 23 years hating and 18 months studying. He was older now, grayer, marked by guilt and grief. The corporate titan who had built an empire was just a broken man who had failed to protect his family. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said finally. "I was angry for years, but anger was just another cage. I needed to let it go so I could focus on justice instead of revenge." "What will you do now?" Sterling asked. "The company is yours, if you want it. Your inheritance, your birthright." Maya shook her head. "I don't want Sterling Industries. I want it dismantled and sold, with the proceeds going to the victims' families and environmental cleanup. I want every facility closed until it can be proven safe. I want every employee relocated to jobs that won't kill them." "And what about you?" Agent Williams asked. "What about your future?" Maya stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawling below. Somewhere in those streets were the foster families who had raised her, the friends who knew her as Maya Chun, the life she had built from nothing. She had spent 18 months pretending to be someone else, but the truth was that she had been pretending her entire life, pretending to be Emma Sterling, the lost heiress, when she was really Maya Chun, the survivor. "I'm going back to school," she said finally. I want to study environmental law. I want to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Sterling's voice was thick with emotion. "I'm proud of you. Your mother would be proud of you too." Maya turned from the window, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know. I carry her with me every day. Her memory, her values, her determination to make the world better. That's not something Victoria could ever take away." Agent Williams began packing up her files. "The trial will begin in 6 months. We'll need your testimony, of course, but the live stream and the evidence you collected should be enough to secure convictions for everyone involved." "What about the people who hired the killers?" Maya asked. "Victoria's dead, but someone else had to be involved. This conspiracy was too big for one person to manage." "We're still investigating," Agent Williams admitted. "But we have leads." Victoria kept meticulous records. Apparently she didn't trust her co-conspirators any more than they trusted her. As the meeting broke up and people began filing out of the boardroom, Sterling lingered behind. "Maya," he said quietly, "I know you don't want the company, but would you consider staying in my life? I lost 23 years with my daughter. I don't want to lose any more time." Maya studied her father's face, seeing the hope and fear warring in his eyes. "I'd like that," she said softly, "but not as Emma Sterling, the lost heiress. As Maya Chen, the woman I chose to become." Sterling nodded, understanding. "Maya Chen it is. Would Maya Chen like to have dinner with her father sometime?" "I'd like that very much." 6 months later, Maya sat in the witness stand of the federal courthouse, facing a packed courtroom filled with journalists, victims' families, and Sterling, Industries employees whose lives had been forever changed by the revelations. The lead prosecutor, District Attorney Rebecca Martinez, stood before her with a thick folder of evidence. "Ms. Chen," Martinez began, "can you tell the court how you first learned about the conspiracy that led to your mother's murder?" Maya's voice was clear and steady as she recounted the 18 months of careful investigation, the gradual accumulation of evidence, and the night when everything came together. She described Victoria's confession, the livestream that had captured it all, and the moment when her stepmother chose death over accountability. "The defendant, Marcus Webb, was present in the building that night," Martinez continued. "Can you tell us about his role in the conspiracy?" Maya looked across the courtroom at Webb, who sat at the defendant's table in an expensive suit that couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. The ambitious junior partner who had once laughed at the janitor now faced federal charges for conspiracy, racketeering, and accessory to murder. "Mr. Webb was Victoria Sterling's inside man," Maya testified. "He provided her with information about employees who were asking inconvenient questions. He helped falsify safety reports and environmental assessments. And he was the one who gave Victoria the layout of our Marin County house the night my mother was killed." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Webb's lawyer jumped to his feet. "Objection. The witness has no direct knowledge of." "Sustained," the judge ruled. "The jury will disregard the last statement." But Maya wasn't finished. "I may not have direct knowledge of the house layout, Your Honor, but I do have Victoria Sterling's encrypted files, which Mr. Webb provided to the FBI as part of his plea agreement. Those files show detailed communications between him and my stepmother, including architectural plans of our family home." Webb's face went pale. His plea agreement had been sealed, but Maya's testimony had just revealed that he was cooperating with the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence. Martinez smiled grimly. "Thank you, Ms. Chen. No further questions." The defense attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Janet Reeves, stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Chen, isn't it true that you infiltrated Sterling Industries under false pretenses?" "I used my legal name, Maya Chen, on all employment documents," Maya replied calmly. "I never lied about my identity." "But you concealed your true identity as Emma Sterling." I concealed an identity that had been stolen from me when I was 5 years old, Maya corrected. I spent 18 months trying to reclaim it. By spying on your coworkers, recording private conversations, and stealing confidential documents. Maya's eyes flashed with anger, but her voice remained controlled. By gathering evidence of crimes that had gone unpunished for 23 years. By documenting a conspiracy that killed my mother and thousands of innocent people. You recorded conversations without consent. You accessed files without authorization. You violated numerous federal laws. Objection, Martinez interrupted. The witness has been granted immunity for her investigative activities. Sustained. Reeves wasn't deterred. Miss Chen, isn't it true that you planned this entire scenario as an elaborate revenge scheme against your father and stepmother? Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. If I had wanted revenge, Ms. Reeves, I would have simply released all the evidence anonymously and watched Sterling Industries burn. Instead, I chose to confront my father, to give him a chance to do the right thing, and to work with law enforcement to ensure that justice was served properly. But you did release information to the media. I released information about the illegal merger and planned layoffs. Maya corrected. Information that saved thousands of jobs and prevented further harm to innocent people. The cross-examination continued for 2 more hours, but Reeves couldn't shake Maya's testimony. When it was over, Maya stepped down from the witness stand feeling drained but vindicated. Outside the courthouse, she was surrounded by reporters shouting questions. Miss Chen, how does it feel to see your mother's killers brought to justice? What's next for Sterling Industries? Are you planning to write a book about your experience? Maya pushed through the crowd without answering, but she paused at the courthouse steps when she saw a familiar face waiting for her. Dr. James Chen, the man who had adopted her 18 years ago, stood with his wife Linda, both of them looking older and more worried than Maya remembered. Behind them stood 3 young adults, Maya's adoptive siblings, who had driven up from Los Angeles to support her. Maya, Dr. Chen said softly, opening his arms. Maya ran to him like the scared teenager she had once been, letting him wrap her in the kind of unconditional love that had saved her life all those years ago. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry. I disappeared without explanation. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you what I was doing. We knew you were searching for answers about your past, Linda Chen said, stroking Maya's hair. We just hoped you'd trust us enough to let us help. I couldn't risk involving you, Maya said, pulling back to look at her adoptive parents. If something had gone wrong, if Victoria had decided to eliminate witnesses. We're your family. So David, Maya's adoptive brother. We don't abandon each other, no matter how dangerous things get. Maya looked at the 4 people who had given her a name, a home, and a future when she had nothing. You're right. You're my family, you always will be. What about him? Asked Sarah, Maya's adoptive sister, nodding toward Richard Sterling, who stood at a respectful distance near a black sedan. Maya glanced at her biological father, then back at the Chens. He's family too, in a different way. I'm learning that you can have more than one family, more than one home, more than one identity. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. That's very wise. And very mature. I learned from the best, Maya said, taking his hand. Come on, I want you to meet my father, the other one. The introduction was awkward but cordial. Richard Sterling shook hands with the man who had raised his daughter, thanking him with obvious emotion for giving Maya the love and stability she had needed. The Chens were polite but reserved, clearly protective of the young woman they considered their daughter. Maya tells us you're funding her law school education, Linda Chen said. It's the least I can do, Sterling replied. She's brilliant, determined, and she has a passion for justice that I admire greatly. She gets that from her mother, Dr. Chen said quietly. Both her mothers. Lily Sterling was a fighter for truth, and Linda has always taught our children to stand up for what's right." Sterling's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for raising her to be the woman her mother would have been proud of." As the two families talked, Maya felt a sense of completeness she hadn't experienced since childhood. She was no longer the lost little girl hiding from her past or the angry young woman plotting revenge. She was Maya Chen Sterling, daughter, sister, survivor, and advocate for justice. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. 2 years later, Maya stood in another courtroom, but this time she wore a tailored suit and carried a leather briefcase instead of sitting in the witness stand. The sign on the defense table read Chen and Associates, Environmental Law, and Maya was representing a group of factory workers who had been exposed to toxic chemicals by their employer. "Your Honor," Maya addressed the judge, "my clients have suffered irreversible neurological damage due to their employer's willful negligence in maintaining safe working conditions. The company knew that the chemicals used in their manufacturing process were dangerous, yet they failed to provide adequate protection or inform workers of the risks." The opposing counsel, a corporate lawyer in an expensive suit, objected. "Your Honor, there's no proof that our client's manufacturing processes caused the alleged health problems." "Actually, there is," Maya interrupted smoothly, producing a thick folder from her briefcase. "I have internal company documents showing that management was aware of the health risks as early as 2019. I also have testimony from 3 former supervisors who were instructed to hide safety reports from federal inspectors." The judge reviewed the documents with interest. Maya watched his expression change as he read through the evidence she had compiled, evidence gathered through the same meticulous investigative techniques she had learned during her 18 months at Sterling Industries. "This is substantial evidence of corporate malfeasance," the judge said finally. "I'm inclined to grant summary judgment for the plaintiffs." Maya allowed herself a small smile. It was her 15th victory in 18 months of practicing environmental law, and each win felt like another step toward honoring her mother's memory. After the hearing, Maya met her clients outside the courthouse. They were simple people, factory workers, maintenance staff, security guards, people who reminded her of the Sterling Industries employees she had worked alongside as a janitor. People who deserved protection from corporate greed and negligence. "Thank you, Ms. Chen," said Maria Rodriguez, the lead plaintiff. "When we first came to you, everyone said we didn't have a chance against such a big company. Everyone was wrong." Maya replied, "Justice doesn't depend on the size of your bank account. It depends on the strength of your evidence and the courage to fight for what's right." As Maya walked back to her office, her phone buzzed with a text message from Richard Sterling. "Saw the news coverage of your victory today. Your mother would be proud. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate?" Maya smiled and typed back, "Can't tomorrow. I'm having dinner with the Chuns. But how about this weekend? I want to hear about your progress with the Environmental Cleanup Fund." Over the past 2 years, Richard Sterling had transformed from corporate predator to environmental advocate. The dissolution of Sterling Industries had left him with substantial personal wealth, most of which he was now dedicating to cleaning up the damage his former company had caused. He had also established the Dr. Lily Chen Sterling Foundation, which funded research into environmental health and provided legal aid to communities affected by corporate pollution. Maya's relationship with her biological father had evolved slowly, built on shared purpose rather than shared genetics. They worked together on environmental cases, collaborated on foundation projects, and gradually developed the kind of mutual respect that might eventually become genuine affection. Her relationship with the Chen family remained as strong as ever. She still thought of them as her real family, the people who had shaped her values and given her the courage to fight for justice. But she had learned that having 2 families didn't diminish either relationship. It simply doubled the love and support in her life. Maya's office was a small suite in a converted warehouse in Oakland, chosen deliberately for its proximity to the community she served. The walls were covered with certificates, awards, and photographs from successful cases. In the center of it all hung a framed portrait of Dr. Chen Sterling, surrounded by newspaper clippings about environmental justice victories. "Long day?" asked Jessica Park, Maya's law partner and former Stanford Law School classmate. "Good day," Maya corrected, settling into her desk chair. "We won the Henderson case. The environmental impact study for the Richmond refinery came back in our favor, and I just got word that the EPA is opening a criminal investigation into Consolidated Chemical based on evidence we provided." "Sounds like you're following in your mother's footsteps," Jessica observed. Maya looked at her mother's photograph, thinking about the brilliant scientist who had died trying to expose corporate corruption. "I hope so. She fought for truth and justice, even when it cost her everything. I want to make sure her sacrifice meant something." "It did mean something," Jessica said gently. "Every victory we win, every family we help, every company we force to clean up their act, it's all part of her legacy." Maya nodded, but her attention was caught by an email that had just arrived in her inbox. The sender was Agent Sarah Williams, and the subject line read, "New information, Sterling case." Maya opened the email with growing excitement. "Maya, I wanted to give you a heads up about a development in the Sterling Industries investigation. We've just arrested Thomas Blackstone, CEO of Blackstone Corporation, on federal conspiracy charges. It turns out that the planned merger with Sterling Industries was part of a larger scheme to monopolize pharmaceutical manufacturing while suppressing competition. More importantly, we found evidence that Blackstone was the one who originally approached Victoria Sterling about eliminating your mother. The conspiracy goes much deeper than we initially realized, involving several major corporations and at least 2 federal officials. I thought you should know that your mother's murder was even more significant than we understood. She wasn't just threatening one company, she was threatening an entire network of corporate criminals. We may need your testimony again if this goes to trial. Are you available to discuss this further? Best regards, Agent Williams. Maya stared at the email, feeling a familiar mixture of anger and determination rising in her chest. Just when she thought the Sterling Industries case was closed, new layers of corruption were being revealed. "What is it?" Jessica asked, noticing Maya's expression. "It looks like I'm not done fighting yet," Maya said, forwarding the email to her partner. "The people who killed my mother were part of something much bigger than we realized." Jessica read the email, her eyes widening. This could be the case of the century. Corporate conspiracy, government corruption, international pharmaceutical cartels. It could also be dangerous, Maya interrupted. "These people have already been killed to protect their secrets. They won't hesitate to kill again, so what are you going to do?" Maya looked at her mother's photograph again, drawing strength from the memory of a woman who had died fighting for truth. Then she picked up her phone and dialed Agent Williams' number. "Agent Williams? This is Maya Chen. I got your email, and I'm ready to help. When do we start?" Agent Williams' office at the FBI San Francisco Field Division looked like a war room. The walls were covered with organizational charts, financial records, and photographs connected by red string. At the center of it all was a timeline stretching back 30 years, showing connections between pharmaceutical companies, government officials, and environmental disasters across the globe. "This is bigger than we ever imagined," Williams said, gesturing to the evidence wall. "Your mother wasn't just threatening Sterling Industries. She was threatening a network of companies that have been systematically poisoning communities and then profiting from the resulting health crises." Maya studied the charts, her legal training helping her identify patterns and connections. "How many companies are involved?" "At least 15 major corporations across 4 countries," Williams replied. They've been coordinating their activities for decades, sharing research, dividing territories, suppressing competition, and eliminating threats. Threats like my mother. Threats like your mother, Williams confirmed. Dr. Lily Chen Sterling wasn't the first scientist they killed, and she wasn't the last. We've identified at least 12 other researchers who died under suspicious circumstances. After discovering evidence of this conspiracy, Maya felt sick. 12 other families were destroyed. 12 other children who lost their parents. Which is why we need your help, Williams said. You've already proven that you can gather evidence and build cases against corporate criminals. We need someone with your skills to help us take down the entire network. What exactly are you asking me to do? Williams pulled out a thick folder labeled Operation Clean Sweep. We're planning a coordinated international investigation involving the FBI, EPA, Justice Department, and law enforcement agencies in 3 other countries. We need someone who understands both the legal and investigative aspects of this case. You want me to go undercover again, Maya said, understanding immediately. Not exactly. We want you to be our public face, a crusading environmental lawyer who's building cases against these companies. But you'd also be working directly with our investigation, helping us understand the legal implications of what we're uncovering. Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. Taking on this role would mean putting herself back in danger, but it would also mean completing the work her mother had started 30 years ago. There's something else, Williams said quietly. We have reason to believe that some of the people involved in this conspiracy are still active in positions of power. Government officials, corporate executives, even judges who have been dismissing environmental cases for years. Meaning that if we're going to bring down this network, we need to be very careful about who we trust. The wrong word to the wrong person could get all of us killed. Maya thought about her law practice, her clients, her 2 families who had finally found peace after years of uncertainty. Taking on this investigation would put all of that at risk. Then she thought about her mother, alone in her laboratory, discovering a conspiracy that cost her life. She thought about the factory workers she represented, poisoned by the same kind of corporate greed that had killed Dr. Lily Chen Sterling. She thought about the 12 other researchers who had died for trying to tell the truth. I'll do it, she said finally, but I have conditions. Name them. First, my law partner Jessica Park gets full security briefings and protection. She's going to be handling our regular cases while I work on this investigation. Second, both my families, the Chens and Richard Sterling, get federal protection if this case goes public. Third, I want access to all the evidence you've collected, not just the pieces you think I need to see. Williams nodded. Done? Anything else? Yes. I want to visit the other families, the ones who lost researchers to this conspiracy. They deserve to know that their loved ones' deaths weren't in vain. That could be arranged. But Maya, you need to understand the scope of what we're taking on. This network has resources, connections, and a 30-year head start on covering their tracks. They've killed 13 researchers, bribed dozens of officials, and poisoned hundreds of thousands of people. They're not going to surrender quietly. Maya stood and walked to the evidence wall, studying the photographs of the dead researchers. Brilliant men and women who had died for discovering the truth, leaving behind families and unfinished work. Agent Williams, she said quietly, they made one crucial mistake. What's that? Maya turned back to face the agent, her eyes burning with determination. They let one of their victims' children grow up to become a lawyer. 6 months into operation Clean Sweep, Maya had established herself as the most aggressive environmental lawyer on the West Coast. Her law firm, Chen & Associates, had expanded to include 12 attorneys, 2 former FBI agents, and a team of investigative journalists who helped expose corporate corruption. But her most important work happened in secret, in secure conference rooms and encrypted video calls with law enforcement agencies around the world. The pattern is consistent across all jurisdictions, Maya reported during a secure video conference with investigators from the US, Canada, Germany, and Japan. Each company in the network follows the same model. They identify communities with weak environmental protections, establish manufacturing facilities that release specific toxins, then develop and market treatments for the resulting health problems. How sophisticated is their coordination? Asked Inspector Klaus Weber from Germany's Federal Criminal Police Office. Extremely sophisticated, Maya replied, sharing documents on her screen. They use coded communications, shell companies, and a rotating leadership structure that makes it almost impossible to identify who's actually making decisions. Agent Williams leaned forward in her chair. Maya, tell them about the judicial corruption we've uncovered. Maya's expression darkened. We've identified at least 30 judges across 4 countries who have been dismissing environmental cases in exchange for payments from network companies. Class action lawsuits that should have resulted in billion-dollar settlements were thrown out on technicalities. Regulatory violations that should have shut down factories were ignored or reduced to meaningless fines. Jesus, muttered Detective Sarah Chun from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. How many people died because of these corrupt cases? We estimate at least 50,000 over the past 20 years, Maya said quietly. And those are just the deaths we can directly link to specific facilities. The actual number is probably much higher. The room fell silent as the investigators absorbed the magnitude of the crimes they were investigating. What's our next move? Asked Special Agent David Kim from the EPA's Criminal Investigation Division. Maya pulled up a new document on her screen. We've identified the network's primary communication hub, a private server farm in Switzerland that handles encrypted communications for all member companies. If we can access their communications, we'll have evidence of active conspiracy and coordination. Getting access to a Swiss server farm won't be easy, Weber pointed out. Swiss privacy laws are extremely strict. I have an idea about that, Maya said with a slight smile. But it's going to require some creative legal maneuvering. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the Swiss federal court in Lausanne, arguing a case that would determine the fate of Operation Clean Sweep. She represented the families of 7 researchers who had been killed by the network, seeking access to communications that might reveal who had ordered their murders. Your Honor, Maya addressed the 3-judge panel in fluent German. My clients have a fundamental right to justice for their murdered family members. The defendants have hidden behind Swiss banking secrecy laws to obstruct legitimate criminal investigations, but those laws were never intended to protect international conspiracy and murder. A lead judge, a stern woman in her 60s, studied the legal briefs carefully. Ms. Chun, the defendants argue that granting your request would violate Switzerland's sovereignty and establish precedent regarding financial privacy. Respectfully, Your Honor, sovereignty cannot be used to shield criminal activity. The evidence shows that servers located in Switzerland were used to coordinate crimes committed in multiple countries, including the murders of 13 researchers and the poisoning of hundreds of thousands of innocent people. Maya presented evidence methodically, building a legal case that would compel the Swiss government to cooperate with international law enforcement. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying Swiss law, consulting with local attorneys, and building relationships with European investigators. The pharmaceutical company's legal team was led by Heinrich Müller, one of Switzerland's most expensive corporate attorneys. He argued passionately that granting Maya's request would destroy Switzerland's reputation as a safe haven for international business. The plaintiff seeks to use Swiss courts to conduct a fishing expedition against legitimate businesses, Müller argued. There is no credible evidence of the international conspiracy she alleges, and her request should be denied to protect both Swiss sovereignty and international business confidence. Maya rose for her rebuttal, knowing that everything depended on the next few minutes. Your Honor, Mr. Mueller claims there's no credible evidence of conspiracy, but I have documentation showing that companies represented by his firm have been coordinating their activities for over 30 years. I have financial records showing payments to the same network of assassins who killed my mother and 12 other researchers. I have communications showing deliberate coordination to suppress competition and eliminate scientific threats to their business model. She paused, making eye contact with each judge. Your Honor, my mother was Dr. Lily Chen Sterling, a brilliant scientist who died trying to expose this conspiracy. I stand before you not just as her daughter, but as an officer of the court seeking justice for thousands of victims. Switzerland has always prided itself on justice and neutrality. I ask you to honor that tradition by allowing the truth to come to light. The judges deliberated for 2 hours before returning with their verdict. Maya stood with her heart pounding, knowing that this decision would determine whether Operation Clean Sweep could move forward or would be stopped by legal obstacles. The court finds that the plaintiff has presented compelling evidence of international criminal conspiracy, the lead judge announced. While we respect Switzerland's banking secrecy laws, those laws cannot be used to obstruct legitimate criminal investigations into murder and mass poisoning. The court orders the defendants to provide access to the requested communications records within 30 days. Maya felt tears of relief streaming down her face. It was the breakthrough that Operation Clean Sweep had been waiting for. Outside the courthouse, she was surrounded by international media asking about the implications of the ruling. Maya kept her comments brief and professional, but her satisfaction was evident. This ruling sends a clear message that corporate criminals cannot hide behind national boundaries or banking secrecy laws. She told the reporters, no matter how wealthy or powerful they are, they will be held accountable for their crimes. That evening, Maya sat in her hotel room overlooking Lake Geneva, video conferencing with Agent Williams and the rest of the Operation Clean Sweep team. Congratulations, Williams said, raising a coffee cup in salute. You just opened the door to the biggest corporate conspiracy case in history. How long before we get access to the server data? Maya asked. Our technical team is already en route to Switzerland, replied Agent Kim. We should have a preliminary analysis within 48 hours. Maya nodded, but her expression remained serious. The real work starts now. Once we have their communications, they'll know we're onto them. They're going to fight back with everything they have. Are you worried? Williams asked. Maya looked out at the peaceful Swiss lake, thinking about her mother's courage and her adoptive family's support and the victims who were counting on her for justice. No, she said finally. I'm ready. The communications data from the Swiss servers revealed a conspiracy more vast and deadly than anyone had imagined. For 3 decades, a network of pharmaceutical companies had been systematically poisoning communities around the world, then profiting from treatments for the diseases they had caused. The evidence was overwhelming: detailed plans, financial transfers, hit lists, and communications showing direct orders for the murders of researchers who had threatened to expose them. Maya stood in the largest courtroom in the federal courthouse in San Francisco, facing the biggest legal battle of her career. Arrayed against her were teams of corporate lawyers representing 15 pharmaceutical companies, dozens of government officials, and a network of assassins and corrupted judges. The defendants included some of the most powerful people in the world: CEOs, cabinet ministers, and billionaire industrialists who had built empires on a foundation of mass murder. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Maya began her opening statement. Over the next several weeks, you will hear evidence of the largest criminal conspiracy in human history. You will learn how a network of pharmaceutical companies deliberately poisoned hundreds of thousands of innocent people, then profited from selling treatments for the diseases they caused. You will hear how they murdered researchers who threatened to expose their crimes, including my mother, Dr. Lily Chen Sterling. The courtroom was packed with journalists, victims' families, and corporate executives who had flown in from around the world to witness the trial. Maya could feel the weight of their attention, but her voice remained steady and strong. The defendants will tell you that they are legitimate business people who were simply trying to develop life-saving medications. They will claim that the deaths and illnesses were unfortunate coincidences, that the researchers died in accidents, that there was no conspiracy. They will try to convince you that a young woman who started as a janitor could not possibly have uncovered evidence that eluded law enforcement for 30 years. Maya paused, making eye contact with several jurors. But the evidence will show that greed and power corrupted these individuals so completely that they lost all sense of human decency. They killed my mother because she discovered their secret. They killed 12 other researchers for the same reason. And they would have continued killing if we hadn't stopped them. The trial lasted 4 months, with Maya and her team presenting evidence gathered from 6 countries and dozens of witnesses. They showed financial records proving coordination between the companies, communications ordering the murders of researchers, and scientific data demonstrating that the defendants had deliberately released toxins into communities around the world. The defense fought back with equal intensity, hiring the best lawyers money could buy and presenting alternative theories. For every piece of evidence, they claimed that the server communications were fabricated, that the financial records were circumstantial, and that the deaths of the researchers were tragic coincidences rather than coordinated murders. But Maya had learned from her experience at Sterling Industries. She had anticipated their arguments and prepared overwhelming evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. The breakthrough came during her cross-examination of Thomas Blackstone, the CEO who had originally approached Victoria Sterling about eliminating Dr. Chen Sterling. "Mr. Blackstone," Maya said, approaching the witness stand with a folder of documents, "you testified that you never communicated directly with Mrs. Victoria Sterling about my mother's research." "That's correct," Blackstone replied confidently. "I had no knowledge of Dr. Sterling's work." Maya opened the folder and pulled out a printed email. "Then can you explain this communication from your personal email account to Mrs. Sterling, dated March 15, 2001, 3 days before my mother was murdered?" Blackstone's face went pale as Maya read the email aloud. "Lily Sterling's research threatens our entire operation. She must be stopped before she can publish her findings. Use whatever means necessary. Make it look like a random crime." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Blackstone's lawyer jumped to his feet with objections, but the damage was done. Maya had caught the conspiracy's ringleader in a direct lie, with documentary evidence proving his involvement in her mother's murder. "No further questions," Maya said calmly, returning to her table as Blackstone sat speechless on the witness stand. The jury deliberated for 6 days before returning with their verdict. Maya stood with her team, surrounded by the families of the murdered researchers and the survivors of the corporate poisoning campaigns, as the jury foreman read the results. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant Thomas Blackstone guilty." The word "guilty" echoed through the courtroom like thunder. Maya felt her knees go weak with relief and triumph. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit mass poisoning, we find the defendant Thomas Blackstone guilty. On the charge of racketeering, we find the defendant Thomas Blackstone guilty." One by one, the verdicts were read. Guilty on all counts for Blackstone and 8 other corporate executives. Guilty verdicts for the corrupted government officials who had protected the conspiracy. Guilty verdicts for the network of assassins who had carried out the murders. When the final verdict was read, Maya sank into her chair, overwhelmed by emotion. Around her, the families of the victims were crying with relief and joy. Journalists were frantically typing on their phones and laptops. The defendants sat in stunned silence, their billion-dollar empire finally brought to justice outside the courthouse. Maya was surrounded by reporters and supporters celebrating the historic victory. "Ms. Chen," called out a reporter from the New York Times, "how does it feel to have brought down the largest corporate conspiracy in history?" Maya took a moment to compose herself before answering. "It feels like justice has finally been served. My mother and the other researchers who died trying to expose the truth can finally rest in peace. The communities that were poisoned will finally receive compensation and medical care. And future researchers will know that speaking truth too. Power is not just heroic, it's protected. What's next for you?" asked another reporter. Maya looked back at the courthouse where she had just won the biggest case of her career, then at the crowd of families whose loved ones had finally received justice. "I'm going back to work," she said with a smile. "There are a lot more corporate criminals out there who think they're too powerful to face consequences. They're about to learn they're wrong." 1 year later, Maya stood in the garden of her mother's former laboratory, which had been converted into the Dr. Chen Sterling Center for Environmental Health Research. The building where her mother had worked and died was now a beacon of hope, housing researchers dedicated to exposing corporate environmental crimes and protecting communities from industrial poisoning. Richard Sterling approached from the parking lot, moving slowly with the aid of a walking cane. The stress of the trial and the revelation of his wife's crimes had aged him significantly, but his eyes held a peace that hadn't been there before. "The dedication ceremony was beautiful," he said, joining Maya beside a newly planted cherry tree. "Your mother would have loved seeing her work continued by so many brilliant young scientists." Maya nodded, watching researchers move in and out of the building that had once been the scene of so much tragedy. She always believed that knowledge should be used to help people, not to line corporate pockets. "Like mother, like daughter," Sterling said with obvious pride. "You've built something remarkable here, Maya. The center, your law firm, the International Environmental Justice Initiative. You're changing the world." "We're changing the world," Maya corrected. "None of this would have been possible without your funding and support." Sterling was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the building where his first wife had died. "I failed her 23 years ago. I was so focused on building my empire that I didn't protect the people I loved most. I can't undo that failure, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to honor her memory." "You've already honored her memory," Maya said gently. "The foundation, the research center, the Environmental Cleanup Fund, Mom, would be proud of what you've accomplished." They were interrupted by the sound of car doors slamming in the parking lot. Maya turned to see the Chen family approaching. Dr. James Chen, Linda, and Maya's 3 adoptive siblings, all dressed up for the dedication ceremony. "Maya," called out Sarah Chen, Maya's adoptive sister, now a medical resident at UCSF. "We brought someone to meet you." Behind the Chen family walked a young woman about Maya's age, with dark hair and intelligent eyes that looked remarkably familiar. Maya felt her heart skip a beat as she realized who she was looking at. "Maya," Dr. Chen said with a broad smile, "I'd like you to meet Dr. Jennifer Park. She's a biochemist who recently joined the research center. She's also someone you've been looking for." Maya stared at the young woman, her mind racing. "Jennifer Park. But the record said you died in the fire at the Seattle facility." Jennifer smiled sadly. "I almost died. I was in the hospital for 6 months with severe burns and lung damage. By the time I recovered, my family had relocated and changed our name for protection. We thought it was safer if everyone believed I was dead." "Your parents were Dr. Michael and Dr. Sarah Park, the research team who were investigating neurological diseases at the Seattle Sterling Industries facility," Maya said, pieces clicking into place. "They were murdered 3 months before your mother was killed," Jennifer confirmed. "I was supposed to die in the fire they set at our lab, but I survived. I've spent the last 20 years preparing for this moment, the chance to continue my parents' work and help bring their killers to justice." Maya felt tears welling in her eyes. You've been searching for the truth too. Just like you, Jennifer said. When I heard about the research center opening, I knew this was where I belonged. I want to help make sure no other families go through what we went through. Richard Sterling stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Park, I owe you an apology. Your parents worked for my company. They died because of my failure to protect them. I'm sorry. Jennifer studied Sterling's face, seeing the genuine remorse there. Mr. Sterling, you weren't the one who killed them. You were a victim of the conspiracy too. What matters now is that we're all working together to prevent it from happening again. Dr. Chen beamed with pride as he watched the two young women, both survivors, both dedicated to justice, shake hands in the shadow of the research center. Maya, Jennifer has been working on something that I think will interest you. She's developed a new method for detecting industrial toxins in groundwater that could revolutionize environmental monitoring. It's based on research my parents started before they died, Jennifer explained. They were developing a way to identify specific chemical signatures that could prove corporate responsibility for environmental poisoning. I've spent 20 years perfecting their work. Maya's eyes lit up with excitement. This could be the key to holding companies accountable before they cause widespread damage, rather than after. Exactly, Jennifer said. Prevention instead of prosecution. As the group walked toward the research center, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Williams. Congratulations on the research center opening. Have you seen the news? 3 more pharmaceutical companies have been indicted, based on evidence from the Blackstone case. The domino effect is working. Maya showed the message to Jennifer, who smiled grimly. Good. Every company that goes down means fewer families destroyed. Inside the research center, the dedication ceremony was in full swing. The main laboratory was filled with environmental scientists, government officials, and community activists from around the world. Maya took the podium to address the crowd, looking out at faces that represented hope for the future. My mother, Dr. Lily Chen Sterling, believed that science should serve humanity, not corporate profits, Maya began. She died trying to expose a conspiracy that had poisoned thousands of innocent people. Today, we honor her memory by continuing her work. She gestured to Jennifer, who stood with the other researchers. We're joined today by Dr. Jennifer Park, whose parents were also murdered for trying to protect public health. Together, we're building a new generation of scientists who will never be silenced by corporate threats. The applause was thunderous. Maya felt a sense of completion that had been missing from her life for 23 years. She was no longer just Maya Chen, the lost girl, or Emma Sterling, the murdered heiress. She was a scientist's daughter, a lawyer's advocate, and a force for justice in a world that desperately needed it. After the ceremony, Maya walked through the laboratory where her mother had worked, now filled with state-of-the-art equipment and brilliant researchers. At the far end of the lab, she found a small memorial wall with photographs of all the scientists who had died fighting corporate environmental crimes. Dr. Lily Chen Sterling's photograph was in the center, surrounded by the images of Dr. Michael Park, Dr. Sarah Park, and 10 other researchers who had given their lives for the truth. Below each photograph was a small plaque with their names and the simple inscription, "They died so others might live." Maya touched her mother's photograph gently. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "We got them all." "Not all of them," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to see Jennifer approaching, her expression serious. "There are still companies out there using the same tactics, still researchers being threatened, still communities being poisoned." "Then we keep fighting," Maya said simply. "For as long as it takes." Jennifer nodded. "For as long as it takes." The two women stood together in the laboratory, surrounded by the photographs of fallen scientists and the humming of equipment that would continue their work. They were no longer alone in their fight. They had each other, their families, and a growing community of researchers and activists dedicated to environmental justice. Outside, the sun was setting over the San Francisco Bay, casting golden light through the laboratory windows. Maya thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment, from the terrified 5-year-old hiding in a panic room to the confident lawyer who had brought down an international conspiracy. She thought about the two families who had loved and supported her. The father who had failed to protect her but had never stopped searching, and the mother whose courage had inspired her to fight for justice. Most of all, she thought about the future, the research that would be conducted in this laboratory, the communities that would be protected, the lives that would be saved because a group of determined people had refused to let corporate criminals hide behind wealth and power. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer asked. Maya smiled, feeling more at peace than she had in years. "I'm thinking about second chances. About how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best thing you ever do." "Your mother would be proud of you," Jennifer said softly. "Both our mothers would be proud," Maya replied. "They started this fight, and we're going to finish it." As they walked out of the laboratory together, Maya's phone buzzed with another message. This one was from a young environmental science student at UC Berkeley. "Ms. Chen, I've discovered some irregularities in groundwater data near a pharmaceutical plant in Colorado. The company is threatening to sue if I publish my findings. Can you help?" Maya looked at the message, then at Jennifer, who was reading over her shoulder. They both smiled. "Looks like we have work to do," Maya said. "I'll pack my bags," Jennifer replied, and with that, the next chapter of their fight for environmental justice began. 5 years after the Blackstone conspiracy trial, Chen Sterling stood before the United Nations Environmental Council in Geneva, addressing delegates from 195 countries about the need for international cooperation in prosecuting environmental crimes. "The poisoning of communities is not a local problem," she told the assembly. "It is a global crisis that requires a global response. Corporate criminals do not respect national boundaries, and neither should our efforts to stop them." In the audience, she could see familiar faces: Agent Williams, now director of the FBI's Environmental Crimes Division; Dr. Jennifer Park, whose groundwater detection system had been adopted by environmental agencies worldwide; and Richard Sterling, who had become one of the most respected environmental philanthropists in the world. After her speech, Maya was approached by a young woman with nervous eyes and a thick folder of documents. "Miss Chen," the woman said quietly, "my name is Dr. Lisa Rodriguez. I'm a researcher at Global Biotech Industries. I've discovered evidence that my company is deliberately contaminating water supplies in developing countries, then selling expensive treatments for the resulting diseases." Maya felt a familiar chill of recognition. How long has this been going on? At least 10 years. Possibly longer. They've been very careful to cover their tracks, but I have documentation that proves the pattern. Dr. Rodriguez's hands were shaking as she held out the folder. "They know I've been asking questions. Last week, someone broke into my apartment and went through my files. I'm scared, Ms. Chen. I don't know who else to trust." Maya took the folder, feeling the weight of another conspiracy, another fight for justice. "Dr. Rodriguez, have you ever heard of the Dr. Lily Chen Sterling Center for Environmental Health Research?" "Of course, it's famous among environmental scientists." "Good," Maya said with a determined smile, "because you're about to become part of its most important investigation yet." As they walked out of the UN building together, Maya's phone buzzed. With a text from Jennifer. "Maya, we've just received reports of suspicious illness patterns in 3 different countries. All nearby facilities are owned by Global Biotech Industries. I think we have another conspiracy to investigate." Maya showed the message to Dr. Rodriguez, whose eyes widened with a mixture of fear and hope. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. Maya looked up at the Swiss sky, thinking about her mother's courage, her father's redemption, and the families who had trusted her to fight for justice. She thought about the research center that bore her mother's name, the international network of environmental advocates they had built, and the young scientists like Dr. Rodriguez who were willing to risk everything to protect innocent people. Yes, Maya said finally, this is just the beginning. But this time, we're ready for them. The fight for environmental justice would continue, but Maya Chen Sterling was no longer the scared little girl hiding in a panic room or the angry young woman plotting revenge. She was exactly what her mother had raised her to be: a scientist's daughter, a seeker of truth, and a protector of the innocent. The janitor who had been dismissed and mocked had become one of the most powerful advocates for justice in the world. And she was just getting started. What did you think of this thrilling journey? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest tailies. What kind of story would you like to hear next?